Welcome to the Jordan Lang Podcast. This is a space where we will have conversations on all of the things like business, wellness, motherhood, social activism, and lots more. Come prepared with an openness to learn, grow, and expand yourself just a little bit further with each topic we discuss. Thank you for joining us today. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 3 of the Jordan Lang Podcast. We are continuing season 1's theme of emotional and mental wellness with today's episode, which is a conversation on shadow work with Chelsie Skowyra. Chelsie is a spiritual therapist and Reiki master who bridges the gap between psychology and spirituality to provide support to anyone on a journey of self-exploration. She is a Pisces sun, Capricorn moon, Pisces rising, with a love for the ocean, curating playlists, and writing. She currently lives in Michigan with her husband and 9-year-old dog, Jiffy. There is a trigger warning on this episode as we discuss teen suicide, trauma, and mental health. If you believe this episode and the content we discuss could be triggering for you, please choose to skip it. This is part 2 of a 2-part conversation with Chelsie. Let's get started with our conversation on shadow work. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm here with Chelsie. We are going to continue part 2 of our conversation. Part 1 was all about spiritual therapy, and here with part 2, we are diving into one of my favorite things to talk about and to practice, and it is shadow work. So we're gonna I'm gonna have this conversation with Chelsie all on shadow work, ask some questions, but I'm probably gonna be asking for more clarification on certain things, just because the shadow work is one of those things that I think sometimes needs further clarification because it can sound kind of scary for some people, right? You think shadow work, you're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Exactly.
So we'll just start right away with what is shadow work and who is it for?
So I define shadow work as the art of either accepting, transmuting, integrating, or releasing the deepest parts of the self. Whether that's negative parts of the self that you see as too much, not enough. And one of the things that people don't realize about shadow work is that sometimes it's about your gifts and your light, actually, that you've kept hidden deep underneath everything. One of the things I think that helps explain shadow work that I like to share is the difference between the ego and the shadow. Like, people are like, well, what's the difference? And so to me, the shadow is the part of the self that like holds the pain, holds the trauma, holds the, whatever it is that is, the core of what you're believing. And the ego is what's kind of making the meaning out of all of that pain. It's the one saying like, oh, that abandonment, we don't ever want to feel that abandonment. So now you're just going to fully believe that everybody is going to constantly abandon you and you won't be surprised. Whereas when we do the shadow work, our higher self and our conscious part gets to say like, no, I'm going to make the meaning of that experience of abandonment. Ego, I see you, I get you. You wanted to protect me. Like, you're not my enemy. I get it. But that's not working for me anymore. So we're going to do something new.
Right. Yes. I think that's so good because, just like an aside, when I had first started practicing shadow work and like speaking more openly about it, I did have a family member. I grew up evangelical Christian. So they were like, what do you mean shadow work? That's like, you're not like doing anything like you shouldn't be doing, right? And I'm like what? What do you mean? So I was able to explain, the shadow, it's those things you want to keep hidden, the parts of you that you don't really want to talk about because it's painful or it's scary or whatever, or parts that maybe you're not even aware of because it's so deep in your subconscious that you aren't even aware of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not like some sort of crazy demonic type of thing for those listening who are like deep in some sort of, Christian religious experience. Just, it's nothing like that.
No, it is. Yeah. When I remember one of the first times I started talking about shadow work on Instagram, I got a message of somebody being like, "Are you practicing black magic?"
Yeah.
I was like, "No, I don't even know like where I would begin with that." And I no. I'm like trying to heal my shit. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, exactly. So how does somebody begin practicing shadow work or, getting into that?
So I think that the number one tool you need to start shadow work is willingness. The willingness to go into it without judgment. This is just, it's like, sometimes I encourage people to look at it as like research. It's an experiment. You're just seeing what's there. You don't need to judge it as good or bad or anything else. So grab that journal.
Yes.
Grab that journal. And all you need to do is write on the top of that journal, what does my shadow want me to know today? Do a little meditation. You can just sit in silence for 30 seconds. You can create a whole shadow self playlist. I have one if you want to listen to mine and be inspired by my 2000s emo self. It's all there.
Yeah.
Let yourself kind of get to that space where you're like, oh, this is reminding me of when I used to feel some type of way. And just write. Like, see what comes out just from that one prompt of what does my shadow want me to know? And then after that, what does my higher self want me to do with this information?
Yeah.
Boom, you have a little mini shadow work practice that you've already started. But super, super important, after doing shadow work, you should always engage in some type of self-care. You should always be balancing it out. It can be as simple as grabbing like a rose essential oil and just putting on some really nice light essential oils and helping yourself to like integrate everything that just happened.
That's a really important note, I think, because there have been times in the past where I've just so focused on the shadow work that I haven't had that self-care integration piece into it. And I feel super heavy. Yeah. It's like I can't shake it. I just feel heavy and gross and like way more depressed than I should be, and it is because I didn't fully integrate, like, what did I learn? What did this bring up? And sometimes it's just needing to release that, right? Like needing to let go of it, feeling it, experiencing it again, and then letting go of it, I think is really important.
Yes.
So,
yeah. Yep. It's reminding yourself like, oh, I have it like a practice for this now. Like, it's okay. Like it's almost like I can't feel heavy again some other time. It's okay. Like shadow work is an all vibes welcome experience.
Yes. Yeah. And I love too that you said that with like, I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but you touched on it with like bad or good, like feelings, emotions. Like one thing that I've learned, especially through this work, is there is no like good or bad. It's just all emotions. Some have lower vibrations to them, some have higher, but they're all okay to feel. And they all have a purpose. So
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So many people hesitate to even start shadow work, especially one of the things I find that like a pattern I've noticed is like people get into spirituality, they find the law of attraction and manifestation, and they're like, oh my God, all I need to do is to say that I am worthy and all of my problems will be solved and my wildest dreams will come true. Love that for me. And I was right there too. I just want everybody to know that when I started my spiritual journey and somebody told me that I need to like feel my feelings, I was like, go fuck yourself. I have been feeling these feelings for my whole life. Like, no, I don't want to feel sad anymore. I don't want to feel anxious anymore. That's why I'm doing this, not to feel that way.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, we're always manifesting, and we're always manifesting from like our core deepest parts of ourself, aka our shadow. So sometimes we're manifesting from a wounded place, not realizing it because we didn't take the time to see what was even there.
Yeah. That's so important. And I love too that you brought that up with when you enter into the world of spirituality, new age. I'm not going to call it bullshit, but it kind of can be bullshit depending on what side of it you land, because there is that love and light, law of attraction, high vibes only, which is toxic as fuck. Like, if you're in that space, just please know that that's really not how it's meant to be all of the time. It's really, really not, because there is that shadow side, that true self, that wounded side of you that in order to manifest, you have to deal with that shit too.
Yes.
It's not going to be high vibes only.
Right.
Like, you have to work through those things. And sometimes you, in order to get, so I listened to the Simple Ayurveda podcast, the most recent episode with Angela's talking to Shivani, and they're talking about manifestation. And Shivani brought up this really important, and I listened to it, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, where she's like, you know, a lot of times when you're manifesting things, the universe is going to bring up all of these things for you to work through in order to become the person you're supposed to be, to receive what you're manifesting. And I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. So within this whole scope, shadow work is so important, because you have to heal these pieces of you to become the person that you're meant to become in order to receive all of the good things, right? Like, oh, it's so powerful how it all works together.
Yes.
I love it.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yes, that's amazing.
So what are the benefits of shadow work? What have you seen to be the benefits, short-term, long-term, all of the things?
Yeah, so I think that shadow work can help us to finally answer the question, why do I do the things I do? You know those moments when like you react to something and you're like, who was that? Why did I do that? Why do I always feel this way about this? Why do I always behave in this manner when this happens to me? Shadow work helps you to find those answers. So many of us are always talking about how tired we are, how we have no energy. Well, there's like this whole resource of energy in the shadow that when we do shadow work, we open it up. I believe that when we take the time to sit with our shadow, we create more space for light to integrate. And so it's just that Rumi quote, you know, the wound is where the light enters. And so that to me is like the embodiment of shadow work. It's okay. Now that I understand this about myself, I can feel better about myself. I have this whole new way of understanding, of being, and to be able to not be afraid of bad days. I think that is one of the greatest gifts of shadow work. It's like, oh, I actually have a process for this. Like this is my shadow, you know, really wanting to experience this. I need to experience this for something and to go from there.
Yeah. So good. So good.
Yes.
So knowing that, how does shadow work and spiritual therapy go together?
Yeah. So a lot of shadow work stuff is attributed to Carl Jung. And to be totally transparent, I have never read any of his stuff. I've seen the quotes, obviously, but there was just something about shadow work that I felt really called to, like, don't pay attention to what anybody else is doing. You're meant to have this process. Trust us.
Yeah.
And so to me, shadow work and spiritual therapy blend so beautifully because it is the invitation to the self to go to that deep level. Sometimes, you know, we can be resistant to going to that deep level, to going there, like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so to be able to give the self permission in, you know, a safe held space can be really beautiful. There's another theory of therapy called narrative therapy, and that's the one that I personally like resonate with the strongest because, you know, one of its founding beliefs is that we're the stories that we tell. And so what stories is your shadow telling? What stories are there?
Yeah.
And how can we, again, with the meaning making, have that mean something, you know, more like beautiful? Do you mind if I share one of my own shadow work experiences I had?
No, that was the next question was, you know, your personal experience with shadow work. So please, share.
Yes. Okay, so obviously I felt the calling to become a therapist for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And I had this experience as a freshman in high school where I was dating a boy at the time, and one of our really good mutual friends came up to us at a football game and was like, hey, I just want to thank you guys for being such great friends. You guys are great, but I'm going to end my life tonight. Like, I'm just saying goodbye. So, as you know, like a 13, 14-year-old, you're just like, what? So he like went off. He was in like the marching band and it was about to be halftime. So he's going to go like perform in the halftime show or whatever. My boyfriend and I are just like, what the fuck was that? Halftime show goes on. We go back to try to find him. Somebody was like, oh, he had a headache. So he left. He went home. My boyfriend like had to go back to his parents, his family, whatever. I lived close enough to the stadium that I could like walk there. My parents weren't there. I was just gonna walk home that night. I ran home. I like sprinted, and I'm not a runner. And so I ran home and was like, this is what happened. Something's not right. So we called his parents' house and his grandma answered, and I told her what was going on. She was like, I'll go check on him. She came back and was like, he's asleep in bed. He's fine. Everything's okay. We hang up the phone, and my intuition, I didn't know at that time, was just like, call back, tell them the plan. So I call back and I say, he told us he was going to take all of his depression medication. I just think you should check on him again.
Yeah.
And so the first time he had attempted in a different way. This time he had taken all of the pills and they just thought he was asleep. So a couple hours pass. Oh, I always get emotional telling this story too. The doorbell rings and it's his mom and brother with flowers thanking me for saving his life. Because he had taken the pills, but luckily they were able to pump his stomach and he's good now. He's like served in the military. He's got a family, all beautiful. Obviously that fucked me up for a little bit because I was like, whoa. I also was like, whatever that gut feeling was that told me, like, I don't want to experience you ever again because this led to something crazy and intense. And so what is going on here? And so all of a sudden I start to do shadow, like I had repressed this memory. Like I was like carried on with life, basically, went to college, went to graduate school, was like, I don't know why I feel this way about all of this, some of these things that were coming up, especially with like teenage suicide.
Yeah.
But then once I started to do the work and was like, why do I want to be a therapist? I was instantly reminded of this memory. And then I was reminded of the role that my intuition played in that memory.
Yeah.
And so rather than the meaning of that memory being life sucks, life is scary, your intuition is going to tell you really fucked up things that are going to freak you out and lead to these intense experiences, I was able to say like, no, like this fuels me. Like I don't want any other teen to be in that position at all. And my intuition like saved a kid's life, and so that bitch is my best friend now. Like we are homies. Like I love you, I trust you, I'm here for you. But I would have still had that intuitive block and just that total almost like an overwhelm feeling when I would think about it, to just feeling like really compassionate and inspired by that story now.
Had you not done that shadow work, that inner work, you wouldn't know why you were feeling that way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you feel like when you've done shadow work and with, you know, your clients and things, do you feel like there's a certain age that comes up, like when you first experience these emotions or these feelings or whatever else? Like, I know for me, it is that like angsty teenager or like preteen, angry as fuck at the world.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of my like anger outbursts come from. And I just sit with it. I'm like, whoa, inner child, hello. Like, hi. You're angry right now. Let's talk about it. Let's journal this out. Let's do some shadow work here. Do you feel like it's a pretty common like age experience?
Yeah, I would say it kind of feels like puberty. Like that whatever age that you were when you first really started going through puberty, that is a really common one for people. I think that also lends to just the brain development, right? Like the 5-year-old self isn't really too worried about like how they're consciously meaning making and things like that. But the shadow self, I think, kind of comes into existence with whatever the first kind of traumatic memory is. I mean, our first traumatic memory is birth, but,
right.
but in terms of just like, oh, this is some shit. Like, and it can be anything from an intense traumatic experience, like I said, to somebody telling you like, oh, you're too loud, and all of a sudden you shut your voice off and you don't talk and things like that. The shadow starts to form to say like, don't worry, heart, I'll hold all of this for you. Be happy. Yeah.
Well, and go ahead.
Oh, I just think it's important for people to know when they're going into shadow work that your shadow is not something that you're going to like defeat or conquer or overcome or anything like that. It's not wrong with you. It's totally there. Like the goal of the system is to protect you. And so that's where kind of, I think a big part of like the integration work comes in, of where we can say, well, I have this way of protecting myself now. Like we can integrate this information and use it in a new way.
Yeah. I think that's such an important piece, because your shadow is a part of you. So if you're trying to conquer it, it's like conquering yourself, which you don't want to do. It's just accepting who you are and understanding yourself even further. Yes. Like, this is why I respond the way that I do, or react, right? Like a lot of times we react before we do the shadow work, and then we're able to respond with love once we do the work. With going, okay, I understand why I'm responding this way. Let's give ourselves love and grace right now. Today's a bad day, and that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story and that experience. I think that it's an important one. I think we all maybe have experienced something similar in the past. I know I have a sort of similar story. that unfortunately didn't end quite as
Yeah.
positively as yours did. So, and honestly, like, I didn't even think of that. I haven't thought of that in like 20 years. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting, like, even just what having a conversation
Yeah.
about this does, with bringing it up. And that's why I think it is so important to do that inner work and to heal and to not just go about everyday life as everything is just like sunshine and roses, because it's really not, not all of the time anyway.
Yes.
So,
And that's why I love to do it with groups, like to do shadow work groups, because
yes.
it's in these conversations that either like, oh, helps you to remember something, and just like that, oh, I am not weird. Like, I am not alone. Like, other people have had similar experiences, similar feelings, similar reactions. I am not a bad person.
Yeah.
That benefit of self-acceptance through shadow work is huge. Huge.
Yes, absolutely. So just to kind of close things out on this conversation, what would you say to someone who's never heard of shadow work before and might be hesitant or afraid to try it out?
Yeah, so I think that shadow work comes to you exactly when you need it. And so if you're starting to see about it, read about it, be curious about it, it's probably knocking on your door for a reason. And to remember that the point of doing shadow work isn't to remember what a terrible person you are, or to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I feel this way about this, or I have these urges. And no, it's to love yourself more. It's to integrate, it's to accept, it is the inner work that leads to the lasting transformations that you wish would just happen through a positive affirmation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not like you saying that, there's just so much truth in that.
Yeah.
So much truth. I love it.
Yeah. You go from saying, I think I'm worthy, to being like, I'm worthy.
I am worthy as fuck. Yes, I know I am, because I love myself, every single piece of myself.
Yes.
I know I'm worthy.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. You still use your positive affirmations. You just believe in them a little bit more.
Yeah. Totally. Thank you for this conversation, Chelsie. It was so good. And I think it's something that people do need to understand a little bit more. It's not scary. It's not something that you should, put off.
Right.
It's just a piece of the human experience. And so getting to know yourself and love yourself even further through shadow work is so powerful.
So powerful.
Yeah. Awesome. So where can people find you, connect with you, and work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok at Chelsie Skowyra. My website's also chelseaskowyra.com. If you'd like to do shadow work with me, we can do that, whether that's one-on-one through the spiritual therapy kind of holding, or like I mentioned, I do host a group. My goal is to host it twice a year. And I do keep it limited space, so that way it's not like it's an actual like held container for that healing to occur. So definitely reach out to me and see if I'm offering my next cohort anytime soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chelsie.
Thank you.
Another big thank you to Chelsie for this conversation on shadow work. If you missed part 1, spiritual therapy, I encourage you to take a listen there as well, as there's so much valuable insight Chelsie shares with us. Make sure to check out the corresponding blog posts on the website, www.jordanlangco.com/blog, and connect with us on our Instagram account at the Jordan Lang Podcast to continue this conversation. If you're finding value in the Jordan Lang podcast, please rate and review on iTunes, as well as download, subscribe, and follow wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Thank you so much for your love and support of the Jordan Lang podcast. Sending you all lots of love.